Through their work, they pleaded with us. Look, see, here we are. We are being annihilated. We are being bombed. Entire family lines are being murdered out of existence. We are being systematically starved. We are being genocided. Anas al-Sharif,
Mohammed Kreke,
Ibrahim Zahir,
Mohammed Nufal,
Mu'min Alaywa.
at least 234. That's the number of journalists Israel has killed in Gaza since October 7, 2023. The journalist death toll tops the combined toll of journalist casualties in the US Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Yugoslav wars, the war in Afghanistan, and the ongoing war in Ukraine. The latest victims, Anas al-Sharif and his 4 other Al Jazeera colleagues, were killed on Sunday night when Israel attacked a tent filled with other journalists. The tent was camped outside a hospital. Like so many others, Anas, Ibrahim, Mu'min, and both Muhammads were killed while they were exhausted, hungry, and living in perpetual displacement. Sleeping, living, and filing their assignments while living in makeshift tents or often in the open air on the rubble that has been accumulated in the place they once called home. Like everyone else in Gaza who is still alive, they lost loved ones and saw their neighbors, family, and friends descend into the hunger, homelessness, misery, trauma, and humiliation that Israel has cruelly and calculatedly inflicted on all of them. We know all of this because they showed it to us. They captured it. They filmed it, collected testimony about it, analyzed it, wrote about it, witnessed it, broadcast it. Through their work, they pleaded with us. Look, see, here we are. We are being annihilated. We are being bombed. Entire family lines are being murdered out of existence. We are being systematically starved. We are being genocided. Yet most of their other journalist colleagues, the ones who speak the languages of power and who speak to the powerful people, chose to doubt them, chose to weave cover for the violence that destroyed them, to obscure facts, obfuscate reality, to confuse, to be complicit. Anas once said, "I never once hesitated to convey the truth as it is, without falsification or distortion, in the hope that God would bear witness against those who remain silent, those who accepted our killing, and those who besieged our breaths." Israel's brutality in Gaza has emaciated Gaza's people, left many of them without limbs, left them unwashed, exhausted, hungry, and so utterly materially poor. The brutality was meant to disfigure and to dehumanize, to make ugly. But Anas and all the other journalists who were killed shows us that Gaza's people are courageous, dignified, and beautiful. Saying your names is our small way of thanking, honoring, and appreciating you for the extraordinary work that you have all done and the brave lives you've lived. Anas al-Sharif, killed August 10th, 2025. Al Jazeera correspondent, killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting him near Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza.
Mohammed Kreke, killed August 10th, 2025. Al Jazeera correspondent, also killed in the Israeli airstrike targeting Al-Sharif near Al-Shifa hospital.
Ibrahim Zahir, killed August 10th, 2025. Al Jazeera crew member, also killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting Al-Sharif near Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City.
Mohammed Nufal, killed August 10th, 2025. Al Jazeera crew member, another member killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting Al-Sharif near Gaza City's Al-Sharif hospital.
Mu'min Alaywa, killed August 10th, 2025. Just another Al Jazeera crew member killed in the Israeli airstrike targeting Al-Sharif near Al-Shifa hospital. 2 non-journalists were also killed in this airstrike.
Muhammad al-Salhi, killed October 7th, 2023 at the Gaza-Israel border, east of Al-Burej. He was a photojournalist for the Fourth Authority news agency and was shot by Israeli forces. Muhammad Jarghoon, also killed October 7th, 2023 at the Israel-Gaza border, east of Rafah. He worked for Smart Media. He was shot by Israeli forces. Ibrahim Muhammad Lafi, also killed October 7, 2023, at the Erez crossing. He was a photographer for Ain Media. Ibrahim was shot by Israeli forces. Asad Shamlak, a freelance journalist, killed on October 8th in Gaza City. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside 9 of his relatives. Hisham Al-Wajha, killed on October 10th, 2023 in Rimal, Gaza City. He worked for Khabar news agency and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Mohammed Subh, also killed on October 10th in Rimal, Gaza City. Mohammed was a photographer for the Khabar news agency and was killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside his colleague Hisham al-Wajha. Saeed al-Tawil, killed on October 10th, 2023 in Rimal, Gaza City. He was the editor-in-chief at Al-Khamsa News. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad Fayyaz Abu Matar, killed on October 11th, 2023 in Rafah by an Israeli airstrike. He was a freelance photojournalist. Ahmed Shihab, killed on October 12th, 2023 in Jabalia. He worked for the radio voice of the prisoners. Ahmed was killed alongside his wife and 3 children in an Israeli airstrike on their residence. Hussam Mubarak, killed October 13th, 2023 in northern Gaza. Hussam worked for Al-Aqsa Voice Radio and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Salam Mema, killed October 13th, 2023 in Jabalia. She was a freelance journalist and the head of the Women Journalists Committee at the Palestinian Media Assembly. She was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her residence. Yusuf Maher Dawash. Yusuf was killed on October 14th, 2023 in Beit Lahia. He was a contributor to the Palestine Chronicle and We Are Not Numbers. Yusuf was killed along with several relatives in an Israeli airstrike on their residence. Abdul Hadi Habib. He was killed on October 16, 2023 near Zaytun. He worked for Al Manara News Agency and HQ News Agency. Abdul Hadi was killed alongside several relatives in an Israeli airstrike on their residence. Issam Bar, killed on October 17, 2023 in northern Gaza. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Mohammed Balusha, killed on October 17, 2023 in Al-Saftawi, northern Gaza. He was the administrator for Palestine Today. Mohammed was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Sami Al-Nadi, killed on October 18, 2023. He was the director of Al-Aqsa TV and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Khalil Abu Atra, killed on October 19, 2023 in Rafah. He was a videographer for Al-Aqsa TV, killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside his brother. Muhammad Abu Ali, killed on October 20th, 2023 in northern Gaza. He worked for Al-Shabaab Radio. Muhammad was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Hani Madhoun, killed on October 21, 2023. He was the administrator for Al-Aqsa TV, killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Rushdie Sarraj, killed on October 22nd, 2023 in Tal Al-Hawa. He was the co-founder of Ain Media. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad Imad Labad, killed on October 23, 2023 in Sheikh Radwan, Gaza City. He worked for Al-Risala and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Salma Mukhaymer, killed on October 25, 2023 in Rafah. She was a freelancer and was killed along with her child in an Israeli airstrike. Ahmed Abu Mahdi, killed on October 25, 2023. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Saeed al-Halabi was killed on October 25, 2023 in the Jabalia refugee camp. He worked for Al-Aqsa and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Jamal al-Faqawi, he was killed on October 25, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He worked for the Midhaq Media Foundation. Jamal was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Zair al-Afghani, killed on October 25, 2023 in Dar al-Balah. He also worked for the Midhaq Media Foundation. Zair was also killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence.
Dua Sharaf was killed on October the 26th, 2023 in Yarmouk camp. She was the host for Al-Aqsa Voice Radio. Dua was killed next to her child in an Israeli airstrike on their residence. Yasser Abu Namus, killed on October the 27th, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He worked for Al Sahel and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Nazmi al-Nadim, he was killed on October the 30th, 2023 in Zaytun. He was the Deputy Director of Finance and Administration for Palestine TV. He was killed alongside his relatives in an airstrike on his residence. Majed Kashko was killed on October the 31st, 2023. He was the Office Director for Palestine TV. Majed was killed along with relatives in an Israeli airstrike. Imad al-Wahidi was also killed on October 31st, 2023. He was the administrator for Palestine TV and was killed alongside his relatives in an Israeli airstrike. Iyad Matar, he was killed on November 1st, 2023 in Deir al-Balah Governorate. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed along with his mother in an airstrike on his residence. Majid Arandas. Majid was also killed on November 1st, 2023 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. He worked for Al-Jamahir and was killed in an airstrike. Muhammad Abu Hattab. He was killed on November 2nd, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He worked for Palestine TV. Muhammad was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. He was killed alongside 11 of his relatives. Mohammed al-Bayari was also killed on November 2nd, 2023. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Haitham Harara. He was killed on November 3rd, 2023 in Rimal, Gaza City. He worked for the government media office in Gaza. Haitham was killed by an airstrike on the gate of Al-Shifa Hospital. Mohammed al-Jaja. He was killed on November 5th, 2023 in Al-Nasser, Gaza City. He was a consultant for Press House Palestine. Mohammed was killed along with his wife and 2 daughters in an airstrike on his residence. Mohammed Abu Hasira was killed on November 7th, 2023 in Wafa. He was killed along with 42 relatives in an airstrike on his residence. Yahya Abu Manir was also killed on November 7th, 2023. He worked for Al-Aqsa Voice Radio and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Ahmed Al-Qara, he was killed on November 10th, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He was a photojournalist for Al-Aqsa University. Ahmed was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Yaqub al-Bash, he was killed on November 13th, 2023 in northern Gaza. Yaqub was the executive director of Nama Radio. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Ahmed Fatima was also killed on November 13th, 2023. He was a photographer for Al-Qahira News and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Mossab Ashur, he was killed on November 18th, 2023 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. Mossab was a photographer. Amru Salah Abu Haya was also killed on November 18th, 2023. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Mustafa El Sawaf, he was also killed on November 18th, 2023 in Shawa Square, Gaza City. Mustafa was a contributor for MSDR News. He was killed with his wife and 2 sons in an airstrike on their residence. Hasuna Salim was also killed on November 18th, 2023 in the Buraj refugee camp. He was a freelance photojournalist and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Sari Mansour was killed on November 18th, 2023. He was the director of Quds News Network. Sari was killed by an Israeli airstrike on the Buraj refugee camp. Abdel Halim Awad was also killed on November 18th, 2023. He was a driver for Al-Aqsa TV. Abdel Halim was killed in an airstrike on his residence. Abdel Halim Awad was also killed on November 18th, 2023. He was a driver for Al-Aqsa TV. Abdel Halim was killed in an airstrike on his residence. Belal Jadala, he was killed on November 19th, 2023. He was the director of Press House Palestine. Belal was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his car that also injured his brother-in-law. Ala Tahir al-Hassanat was killed on November 20th, 2023. She was a presenter for Al-Majdat Media Network. Ala was reportedly killed alongside relatives in an airstrike on her residence. Ayat Kadura was also killed on November 20th, 2023 in Beit Lahia. She was a freelance journalist and podcaster and was killed next to relatives in an Israeli airstrike on her residence. Jamal Hanir was killed on November 21st, 2023 in Gaza City. He worked for Amwaj Sports Media Network and was killed by an Israeli bombardment. Mohammed Nabil Al-Zak, he was killed on November 22nd, 2023 by an Israeli airstrike. He was the social media manager for Quds news network. Assem al-Bash was also killed on November the 22nd, 2023 in Al-Safdawi. He worked for Al-Ray Radio. Assem was shot by an Israeli sniper.
Muhammad Mu'in Ayyash was killed on November 23, 2023 in a Nusayrat refugee camp. He was a freelance photographer. Muhammad was killed along with 20 family members in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Mustafa Bakir. He was killed on November 24, 2023 in Rafah. He was a cameraman for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Amal Zahid was also killed on November 24, 2023 in Gaza City. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Nader al-Nazli was killed on November 25, 2023 by the bombing of his residence. He was a technician for Palestine TV. Adham Hassouna. He was killed on December 1st, 2023 in an Israeli airstrike. He was a freelance journalist. Adham was killed alongside his relatives. Muntasir al-Sawaf. He was killed on December 1st, 2023 in an Israeli raid. He was a cameraman for Anadolu Agency. Marwan al-Sawaf was killed on December 1st, 2023. He was the soundman for Anadolu Agency. He was killed in the same Israeli raid as his brother, Muntasir al-Sawaf. Abdullah Darwish. He was killed on December 1st, 2023. He was a cameraman for Anadolu Agency, and he was killed in the same attack as Muntasir and Marwan al-Sawaf. Shayma Gazzar was killed on December 3rd, 2023 in Rafah. She worked for Al-Majidat and was killed along with relatives in an Israeli airstrike. Hassan Farajallah. He was killed on December 3rd, 2023. Hassan worked for Al-Quds TV and was killed in an Israeli attack. Hamad al-Yazji was also killed on December 3rd, 2023 in Sheikh Radwan. He was the director of Canaan News Agency and also worked for Al-Quds Radio. Hamada was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Abdul Hamid al-Qarnawi was killed on December 4th, 2023 in the Nusayrat camp. He worked for the Amwaj Sports Radio and was killed by Israeli bombing. Saeed al-Shorbaji. He was killed on December 7th, 2023 in Khan Yunis. Saeed was killed next to his family. Ala Atallah was killed on December 9th, 2023 in the Daraj quarter in Gaza City. Ala was killed along with 9 relatives in an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad Abu Samra was killed on December 9th, 2023 in southern Gaza. He was a photojournalist who was killed during an Israeli bombardment. Du'a Jabur was also killed on December 9th, 2023 in Khan Yunis. She worked for the Eyes Media Network and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her residence. Narmin Qawas was killed on December 11th, 2023 in Gaza. She worked for Russia Today and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her home. Hanan Ayad was killed on December 13th, 2023. She was a freelance journalist and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Abdul Karim Audeh was killed on December 13th, 2023 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Ahmed Abu Absa was killed on December 13, 2023 in Gaza. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Samir Abu Daqqa. He was killed on December 15, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He was a cameraman for Al Jazeera. Samir was killed in an Israeli missile strike on a school that also injured Bureau Chief Wa'il al-Dahdouh. Rami Badir was also killed on December 15, 2023 in Khan Yunis. Rami worked for New Press and head of news and was killed in an Israeli attack. Asim Musa. He was killed on December 17, 2023 in Khan Yunis. He worked for Palestine Now and was killed in an airstrike. Haneen Kashtan was also killed on December 17, 2023 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. She worked for Al Kufiya TV and Baladna TV and was killed in an airstrike. Abdullah Alwan was killed on December 18, 2023 in Gaza City. He was a photographer and was killed by an Israeli missile strike. Adil Zurub was killed on December 19, 2023 in Rafah. He worked for Al-Aqsa Voice Radio. Adil was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with his family. Ala Abu Muammar. He was killed on December 21st, 2023 in Khan Yunis. Ala was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with his family.
Mohammed Khalifa was killed on December 22nd, 2023 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. He was the director of Al-Aqsa TV and was killed in an airstrike. Mohammed Nasser Abu Huwaidi was killed on December 23, 2023 in northern Gaza. He worked for Al-Istiqlal newspaper and was killed in an Israeli airstrike while covering the aftermath of previous Israeli airstrikes. Ahmad Jamal al-Madhoun was killed on December 24, 2023. Ahmad was the deputy director of Al-Rai agency and was killed in an airstrike. Mohammed Azaytuniya was killed on December 24, 2023 in Gaza City. He was the sound engineer for Al-Rai and was killed in an airstrike. Mohammed Alif was killed alongside his Al-Rai colleagues in an airstrike on Gaza City. Mohammed was the sound photographer for Al-Rai. Ahmed Khair al-Din was killed on December 28, 2023 in Beit Lahia. He was a photojournalist and was killed in an airstrike. Mohammed Khair al-Din was also killed on December 28, 2023 in Beit Lahia in the same airstrike that killed Ahmed. Jabir Abu Hadros was killed on December 29, 2023 in Nusrat. Jabir worked for Al-Quds TV and was killed by an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Narmim Harbush was killed on December 30, 2023 in Gaza City. Narmim was the media program coordinator and board member at the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation. Narmim was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Hamza al-Dadou was killed on January 7, 2024 in Khan Yunis. He was a journalist for Al Jazeera. Hamza was killed along with a colleague by an Israeli airstrike on their vehicle. He is also the son of Wael al-Dadou. Mustafa Thuraya was also killed on January 7, 2024 in Khan Yunis, in the same attack that killed Hamza al-Dadou. He was a freelance journalist. Abdullah Baris was killed on January 8, 2024 in an Israeli airstrike. Mohammed Abu Dayer was also killed on January 8, 2024 by an Israeli airstrike. Hiba al-Abadla. She was killed on January 9, 2024 in Khan Yunis. Hiba was the host of Al-Azhar Radio and was killed along with her daughter and several relatives in an Israeli airstrike. Ahmed Badir was killed on January 10, 2024 in Deir el-Balah. He worked for Al-Hadaf and was killed in an Israeli airstrike near the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. Mohammed Jamal Sopi al-Thalathini, he was killed on January 11, 2024 in southern Gaza. Mohammed worked for Al-Quds al-Yum and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Yazan al-Zuwaidi was killed on January 14, 2024 in Beit Hanun. Yazan was a cameraman for Al-Khad TV. Wael Fanoune. He was killed on January 18, 2024 in Gaza City. Wael was the news director for Al-Quds TV and was killed in an airstrike. Iyad Ahmed al-Rawag was killed on January 27, 2024 in the Nusrat refugee camp. Iyad worked for Saut Al-Aqsa Radio. Mohammed Atala was killed on January 29, 2024 in the Shati refugee camp. He was the editor of Al-Risala and a writer for Rasif 22. Mohammed was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with several relatives. Rizq al-Kharabli was killed on February 7, 2024 in Khan Yunis. He was the director of the Palestinian Information Center and was killed in an Israeli bombardment. Nafiz Abdel Jawad. He was killed on February 8, 2024 in Deir el-Balah. He worked for Palestine TV and was killed in an Israeli missile attack on a residential building. Yasser Mamdou el-Fadi was shot by an Israeli sniper on February 11, 2024 in Khan Yunis. Yasser worked for the Canaan news agency. Angam Ahmad Edwan was killed on February 12, 2024 in Jabalia. She worked for February TV and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her residence. Ala al-Hums was killed on February 12, 2024 in Rafah. She worked for Al-Masira TV and was killed in an Israeli shelling of her residence. Ayman al-Rafati. He was killed on February 14, 2024 in Gaza City. Ayman was a contributor for Al-Mayadeen. Ayman was killed along with his brother, sister-in-law and nephews in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Zaid Abu Zayed was killed in an Israeli airstrike on February 15, 2024 in the Nusrat camp. He was the director of Quran Radio.
Ihab Nasrallah. He was killed in Zaytun, Gaza City, on February the 21st, 2024. He was killed next to his wife. Muhammad Yaghi was a freelance journalist. He was killed on February the 23rd, 2024 in Deir al-Bala. Muhammad was killed alongside his family. Muhammad Salama was killed on March the 5th, 2024 in Deir al-Bala. He was a host for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed along with his family in an Israeli airstrike on his residence. Abdurrahman Saima. He was killed on March the 14th, 2025 in the Burej refugee camp. He was a photojournalist for Aqami TV and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad al-Rifi was killed on March the 15th, 2024 in the southeast of Gaza City. He was a freelance photographer who was shot by the Israeli army while trying to obtain flour during a humanitarian aid delivery. Sahar Akram Rayan. He was killed on March the 25th, 2024 in Gaza City. Sahar was killed along with his son in an Israeli strike while assisting injured neighbors. Muhammad Abu Sukhail was killed on March the 29th, 2024 at Al-Shifa Hospital. He was shot by the Israeli military. Muhammad was an editor for Sawt al-Quds Radio and a graphic designer for Am's news agency. Amna Hamid was killed on April the 24th, 2024 in the Al-Shati refugee camp. She was a poet and journalist and was bombed in her home alongside her 2 children. Muhammad Bassam al-Jamal was killed on April the 25th, 2024 in Rafah by an Israeli airstrike which also killed 6 of his relatives. Muhammad was a photographer for Palestine Now news agency. Ayman Muhammad al-Gharbawi, killed on April the 26th, 2024 in Hamad City. He was a freelance photojournalist and killed along with his brother Ibrahim in an Israeli drone strike. Ibrahim Muhammad al-Gharbawi was also killed on April the 26th, 2024 in the same attack that killed Ayman. Ibrahim was also a freelance photojournalist. Salam Abu Tuyur. He was killed on April the 29th, 2024 in the Nusayrat camp. Salam was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence alongside 2 relatives. Mustafa Ayad was killed on May the 6th, 2024 in Zaytun. He was a freelance journalist. Mustafa was killed by an airstrike on his residence. Baha Okasha. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike on his residence in the Jebaliya refugee camp on May the 11th, 2024. Baha worked for Al-Aqsa TV. He was killed next to his wife and son. Amna Mahmoud Hamid was killed on May the 16th, 2024. Amna was killed by Israeli forces. Mu'taz Mustafa al-Ghafrit was a photojournalist for the Palestinian Media Corporation and Ard Kanan. He was killed by Israeli forces on May the 16th, 2024. Mahmoud Jahju was also killed on May the 16th, 2024. He was a photojournalist for Palestine Post and was killed by Israeli forces. Hayal al-Najjar. He was also killed by Israeli forces on May the 16th, 2024. Hayal was the editor for the Al-Aqsa Media Network. Ola al-Dahdu was killed on June the 1st, 2024 in Gaza City. She was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her residence. Abdullah Ahmed al-Jamal, killed on June the 9th, 2024 by Israeli forces. Abdullah was the editor of Palestine Now. Ahlam Izzat al-Ajla was also killed on June the 9th by Israeli forces. Ahlam worked for Family Happiness magazine. Dina Abdullah al-Batniji was also killed by Israeli forces on June the 9th, 2024. She worked for the Al-Thuraya Media Foundation. Mahmoud Qasim was killed by Israeli forces on June the 17th, 2024. He worked for Palestine Online. Salim al-Sharafa, killed on June the 20th, 2024 by an Israeli airstrike. Salim worked for Al-Aqsa TV. Muhammad Mahmoud Abu Sharia was killed on July the 1st, 2024 by Israeli forces. Muhammad used to work for Shams news agency. Ahmed Sukar was killed on July the 5th, 2024 in Daraj, Gaza City. He was killed along with 2 others by Israeli forces. Sa'di Madouh was killed in the same attack as Ahmed in Gaza City.
Rizq Abu Ashkian. killed on July 6, 2024 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. Rizk worked for the Palestine Media Agency and was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Amjad Jahju, also killed on July 6, 2024, alongside his colleague Rizk. Wafa Abu Daban was killed at the Nusayrat refugee camp on July 6. He worked for the Islamic University Radio. Wafa was killed by an Israeli airstrike alongside 10 other people, including his wife and children. Muhammad Manhal Abu Amana was killed on July 13th by an Israeli airstrike in Khan Yunis. Muhammad Abdullah Mishmish, the program director for South al-Awsa Radio, was also killed by Israeli forces on July 16, 2024. Muhammad Abu Jasser, killed on July 20, 2024. An Israeli airstrike on the Jabalia refugee camp killed Muhammad, his wife, and their 2 children. Mutassim Mahmoud Gharab was killed by Israeli forces on July 21, 2024. Haidar Ibrahim al-Mastar was killed by an Israeli airstrike on a media tent on July 22, 2024 in Deir al-Balah. Ismail al-Ghul, a correspondent for Al Jazeera, was killed on July 31, 2024. He was killed by Israeli forces at the Al-Shati camp. Rami al-Rafi was killed alongside Ismail al-Ghul in the same attack on Al-Shati camp. Rami was a cameraman for Al Jazeera Arabic. Muhammad Isa Abu Sada was killed by Israeli forces on August 6, 2024. Tamim Muammar, killed on August 9, 2024 in Khan Yunis. Tamim was killed by an Israeli airstrike alongside 6 other people. Ibrahim Muharrab, a freelance journalist, was killed by Israeli forces in Hamad city. Hamza Abdulrahman Mutaja, killed on August 20, 2024. He was a photographer and journalist. Hamza was killed by an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza city. Meadow Halimi, killed on August 26, 2024. Meadow was a citizen journalist, killed by an Israeli airstrike in Khan Yunis. Abdullah Shakshak was killed on September 15, 2024. He was killed by an Israeli quadcopter in southern Gaza. Wafa al-Udaini was killed on September 30, 2024 in Deir al-Balah. Wafa was killed by an Israeli airstrike in an area deemed a safe humanitarian zone, along with 3 family members, including 2 children. Hassan Hamad was killed on October 6, 2024 in northern Jabalia. He was a freelance journalist and was killed by an Israeli airstrike on his home. Muhammad Tanani, killed on October 9, 2024 in Jabalia. He worked for Al-Aqsa TV and was killed while covering the siege of Jabalia. Ayman Mohammed Rawashid was killed on October 14, 2024 by Israeli forces. He was a photojournalist. Saeed Radwan, killed on October 27, 2024 by an Israeli attack. Saeed worked for Al-Aqsa TV. Hamza Abu Salmiya was also killed on October 27, 2024 by an Israeli attack. Hamza worked for Sanad News Agency. Haneen Baroud, also killed on October 27, 2024 by an Israeli attack. Haneen worked for the Al-Quds Foundation. Bilal Rajab was killed by an Israeli bombardment on November 1, 2024. Bilal worked for Al-Quds Al-Yum TV. Bara al-Dagish, killed on November 2, 2024 by Israeli forces at the Nusayrat camp. Bara was a photojournalist. Khalid Abu Zir was killed by Israeli forces on November 8, 2024. Ahmed Abu Sakhil, killed on November 9, 2024 at the Fad al-Sabah school, Gaza City. Ahmad was killed by an Israeli airstrike alongside his sister and father. Zara Abu Sakhil, the sister of Ahmad Abu Sakhil, killed in the same attack.
Unidentified journalist, killed on November 11, 2024 at the northern Nusayrat camp. The journalist was killed by Israeli forces alongside his wife. Muhammad Saleh al-Sharif, killed on November 16, 2024 by an Israeli drone in North Gaza alongside his cousin. Ahmed Abu Shari'a, killed November 19, 2024 in Sabra, Gaza. Ahmed was the editor and photographer for several media outlets. He was killed when Israeli tanks shelled his home. Mahmoud al-Khatib was killed on November 20th, 2024. Abdul Rahim al-Tahrawi, also killed on November 20th, 2024 in an Israeli airstrike. Wa'il Abu Qufa, lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Media of the Islamic University of Gaza, killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Ala Fawzi Barhoum was killed on November 27, 2024 in Gaza City. Ala was the editor for several news outlets and was killed when Israel sent airstrikes on the El Tabi'in school in Gaza City. Mamdouh Qunaita was killed on November 30th, 2024. Mamdouh was the editor of Al-Aqsa satellite channel. He was killed by Israeli forces near the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital. Maysara Ahmed Salah, killed on December 1st, 2024 in Gaza. Maysara worked for Quds News Network. She was killed in an Israeli attack. Muhammad Hijazi, killed on December 5th, 2024. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike on the Jabaliya refugee camp. Iman al-Shanti, killed on December 11th, 2024 in Sheikh Radwan. Iman used to work for Al-Aqsa Radio but was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with her family. Muhammad Ba'lusha, killed December 14th, 2024. Muhammad worked for Al-Mashhad channel. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad Jabr al-Qarainawi was also killed in an Israeli airstrike on December 14th, 2024. Muhammad worked for the Sanad news agency. He was killed alongside with his family. Ahmed Al-Luh, a cameraman for Al Jazeera, was killed on December 15th, 2024. He was killed alongside 5 Palestinian civil defense workers when Israel struck the Nusayrat camp. Hazem Abu Arqub was killed on December 21st, 2024 in Khan Yunis. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike next to his wife. Fadi Hassouna, killed December 26, 2024. A crew member of Al-Quds Today, Ibrahim al-Sheikh Ali, killed alongside his colleague on December 26, 2024. Another crew member for Al-Quds Today. Ayman al-Jadi, killed December 26, 2024. A crew member for Al-Quds Today. Muhammad al-Ladda', killed December 26, 2024. A crew member of Al-Quds Today. Faisal Abu al-Qumsan, also killed on December 26, 2024. A crew member of Al-Quds Today. All 5 members of Al-Quds Today were killed by a targeted Israeli airstrike on a vehicle marked with press. The strike happened outside Al-Awda Hospital, Nusayrat camp. Shada al-Sabbah, killed December 27th, 2024 in Jenin. Shada was shot in the head during clashes between militants and Palestinian National Security Forces. Hassan al-Qishawi, a photojournalist, was killed by an Israeli drone on January 2nd, 2025 in Gaza. Omar Salah al-Darawi, killed on January 3rd, 2025. Omar was a photojournalist for several news agencies and was killed by Israeli bombing. Arid Shaheen, also killed January 3rd, 2025. Arid was a freelance photographer and was killed by Israeli forces at the Nusayrat refugee camp. Sa'id Abu Nabhan was killed on January 10th, 2025 in the Al Jadid refugee camp in Nusayrat. Sa'id was a freelance cameraman for Anadolu agency. He was killed by an Israeli long-range rifle attack. Ahlam Nafeth al-Taluli was killed on January 13th, 2025 in Gaza City. Ahlam was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Muhammad al-Talmas, killed January 14th, 2025. He worked for the Safa news agency. Israeli forces killed him during an airstrike in Sheikh Radwan.
Aqil Saleh, killed on January 15th, 2025 by an Israeli airstrike at the Shati refugee camp. Ahmed Abu Rous, also killed on January 15th, 2025 by an Israeli airstrike at the Nusayrat refugee camp. Ahmed al-Shayyah, killed by an Israeli drone strike in Khan Yunis on January 15th, 2025. Ala Hashim died on March 15th, 2025 after sustaining injuries from Israeli bombardment in Gaza City. Hussam al-Titi, former ABC News journalist, was killed on March 17th, 2025 in an Israeli airstrike on Deir al-Balah. Muhammad Mansour, killed March 24th, 2025 He was a correspondent for Palestine Today. Muhammad was killed by an Israeli airstrike on Khan Yunis. Hussam Shabat, killed March 24, 2025. A journalist at Al Jazeera Mubashir, Hussam was killed by an Israeli airstrike in Beit Hanun. Muhammad Saleh Al-Bardawil worked for Al-Aqsa Radio. He was killed on March 31, 2025 in Khan Yunis. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Islam Miqdad was killed on April 6, 2025 in Khan Yunis. She was killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside her son. Hilmi Al-Faqawi, killed April 7, 2025, a journalist for Palestine Today. Nasser Hospital, Khan Yunis. Ahmed Mansour, killed April 7, 2025, died after sustaining injuries from the Israeli airstrike that killed Hilmi Al-Faqawi. Fatima Hassouna was a photojournalist. She was killed April 16, 2025, in Gaza City. An Israeli airstrike killed her alongside 10 of her relatives. Saeed Abu Hassanain was killed April 23, 2025. Saeed worked for Al-Aqsa Radio. Saeed died after sustaining wounds from an Israeli airstrike in Deir al-Balah. Nur ad-Din Matar Abdu, killed May 7, 2025, Tufah. Nur was killed in an Israeli airstrike at the Karama school. Yahya Sobeh, also killed May 7, 2025, Gaza. Yahya was killed in an Israeli airstrike after he welcomed his newborn daughter. Hassan Asleh was killed on May 13, 2025 in Khan Yunis. Hassan worked for Alam 24 news agency. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike while receiving treatment at Nasser Hospital. Hassan Samour was killed May 15, 2025, Khan Yunis. He worked for Al-Aqsa Radio. Hassan was killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside 11 members of his family. Ahmed Al-Hilu, also killed May 15, 2025, Khan Yunis. Ahmed was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Aziz Al-Hajjar was a photojournalist. He was killed on May 17, 2025 in northern Gaza. Aziz was killed by Israeli forces alongside with his wife and children. Noor Qandil was also killed on May 17, 2025 in Deir al-Balah. Noor was killed alongside her husband and infant daughter during an Israeli attack on her home. Abdurrahman al-Abadli, killed on May 17, 2025, Khan Yunis. Abdurrahman went missing 2 days prior. His death was confirmed by the Al-Quds network. Ahmad al-Zinati, just another journalist, killed on May 17, 2025, Khan Yunis. Ahmad was killed along with his wife and their 2 children. Khalid Abu Saif, killed May 17, 2025, killed in an Israeli airstrike in Deir al-Balah along with his wife and daughter. Yaqeen Hamad, 11-year-old digital journalist and Awaina collective volunteer, killed by an Israeli airstrike on May 23, 2025 in Deir al-Balah. Bilal al-Hattoum, killed May 23, 2025 in Al-Saftawi, killed by an Israeli airstrike.
Hassan Majdi Abu Warda, killed in Jabalia on May 25, 2025, killed in an Israeli airstrike alongside his relatives. Mu'taz Rajab, editor of Al-Quds TV, killed in Gaza City on May 28, 2025, killed by an Israeli airstrike. Suleiman Hajjaj, killed June 5, 2025. He was a correspondent for Palestine Today, but was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Al-Ahli Arab Hospital. He was killed alongside 2 of his relatives. Ismail Bada, also killed on June 5, 2025. Ismail was a cameraman for Palestine Today. Samir al-Rifai, killed June 5, 2025. Samir worked for Shams news agency. Ahmed Kalaja, another media personnel, killed on June 5, 2025. Ahmed was a cameraman for Arabi Television Network. Mu'min Abu Aluf, killed on June 9, 2025 in Tufa, killed by Israeli airstrikes with 3 other paramedic workers. Ismail Abu Hattab, a photojournalist, killed June 30, 2025 in Gaza City, killed by an Israeli airstrike along with 33 others after Israeli forces targeted a beachside cafe. Ahmed Salama Abu Aisha was killed on July 11, 2025 in Nusayrat. He was killed by an Israeli drone in front of his home. Hussam Al-Aluni, killed on July 13, 2025 in Al-Mawasi, killed along with his wife and 3 children after Israeli forces targeted them in a tent. Fadi Khalifa, also killed July 13, 2025 in Gaza City, killed in an Israeli airstrike while inspecting his home. Tamar Al-Zanin, a freelance journalist, killed on July 21, 2025 in Al-Mawasi. He was killed in an Israeli raid. Wala Al-Jabari, killed on July 23, 2025, in Tel Al-Hawa. Walaa was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with her husband and 4 of their children. She was also pregnant at the time of her death. Marwa Muslim, killed August 1, 2025. She was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza City. Killed in an Israeli airstrike next to her 2 brothers.